If you live in a European Union member state, you have the right to live and work in any of the other member states. EU countries cannot stop any citizen from another European Union country from living and working there. This means that every year, numerous Europeans move between European countries. Europe is also a popular destination for people who do not live in the EU. With non-EU citizens, individual countries can decide how many they will admit. So what I want to look at today is how many people leave Britain to go and live and work in other places, and how have people from Britain and Europe responded to migration in recent years. There is a huge amount of migration within the EU. In Britain, emigration from the EU countries has steadily increased over the past 50 years. In the 1970s, for example, around 20,000 EU citizens entered Britain every year, rising to about 60,000 per year in the late 1990s and early 2000s. There was a huge increase in emigration into Britain from the EU countries in 2004, when 8 more countries joined the EU, including Eastern European nations such as Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. Generally speaking, these countries were poorer than many of the existing EU countries, so the wealthier countries such as Britain, Germany, and France attracted people from the new EU member countries. As a result, between 2004 and 2006, around 600,000 Eastern European immigrants come to Britain. Many found jobs in construction and retail industries, earning 5 times as much as they would have done in their home countries. When the EU was expanded in 2004, the largest group of new EU migrants into Britain were from Poland. So using Poland as an example, this table outlines the impacts of this migration on both Britain and Poland. So impacts on Britain as the host country: many immigrants are young, hardworking and motivated. Many feel shortage jobs in farm work, building and healthcare, and this is something that we've even experienced today during the coronavirus pandemic, in which there are concerns that because people cannot travel from other countries to complete agricultural jobs, the government are trying to recruit British people to be able to work in those jobs that are currently needed. Local services such as schools and housing can sometimes be strained in some communities, and local and national economic benefits because of the immigrants renting houses, buying goods and services, and also paying taxes. Now, impacts on Poland. Money that was sent back to Poland was almost £4 billion in 2005 to 2006, and that helps the Polish economy. Lots of people, for example, who come across might be fathers who come across to be able to send money back to their wives or children or elderly relatives, and that money is then invested in the Polish economy. There were fewer unemployed people in Poland. However, there were also fewer skilled workers in Poland, such as dentists and plumbers, who have travelled across countries like Britain because they get a better pay. Poland's population is also ageing because so many younger workers are leaving. This means the Polish government does not receive tax from these people. Now, after the Second World War, emigration was encouraged by the British government. Immigrants came mainly from former or current countries of the British Empire. Britain tightened emigration controls in the 1970s, but many thousands of non-EU migrants still came to Britain. Britain operates a points-based system for non-EU immigrants. Applicants are awarded points dependent upon their skills, education, income and age. And if the applicant reaches a certain total of points, then they are given a visa to allow them to enter into Britain for work, especially if there's a shortage of labour in that sector. Britain also gives permission for thousands of non-EU citizens to come into the country to study at colleges and universities. Some of the most common non-EU countries where immigrants came from into Britain from India, Pakistan and the Philippines, Australia, China and the USA and Bangladesh. Now, it is really important to note that we've now left the EU. So what I'm talking about is until this year is what happened. There is still a deliberation on how they're going to accept EU migrants into Britain. That is still kind of part of the problem and part of what is going on. We now no longer have these open borders. Now, one thing that we need to look at is this idea of net migration. There are roughly the same amount of EU citizens moving into Britain as there are non-EU citizens. But people also leave Britain too. People emigrate for all sorts of reasons, including a better job, a better climate, or more opportunities. Net migration is the final change in population after all people leaving Britain. So those emigrating and all people moving into Britain, which is immigrating. That is when it's been taken into account. So net migration is the amount of people leaving, the amount of people coming to Britain, and it's that overall change. Graph B, which is on the right hand side, shows Britain's net migration figures from 2005 to 2015. The figures clearly fluctuate a lot, but overall net migration has remained roughly the same. People have different opinions about the impact of migration on Britain. Some believe that immigration damages community relations and that there is a great public anxiety over pressures such as pressure on public services. Others argue that most immigrants are young and able, so they work and pay more in taxes. They use less of the public healthcare and education services, and they also help with the economic growth of the country. In recent years, there has actually been a growing number of refugees looking to come to the EU from war-torn countries like Afghanistan, Iraq and Syria. And many governments, including Britain, have made it harder to gain entry into their countries. But the EU works to be able to make sure there's this long-term humanitarian approach on migration for asylum seekers. Now, migration is a really big topic. However, one thing that I really hope that you've learned during this section of your GCSE is that we all stem from migrants. Think right back to the Vikings travelling across as far as that. My family, for example, are migrants. I think it's 1/8 Russian. My great grandparents all came from Russia, Finland, Denmark, Sweden, and all around that area. We are all have migration in our heritage.